Today, we're honored to have Mr. Lam Wee Shann from the Land Transport Authority of Singapore. Mr. Lam is Senior Group Director of Technology and Industry Development at LTA, and today he'll be sharing about the future of urban mobility in Singapore and how it will be using emerging technologies to transform the transportation landscape. May I now have the honor to welcome Mr. Lam to begin his sharing. Mr. Lam, please.
Hi, hello. I hope all of you can hear me well. Yeah, so maybe I can call up the slides first. And happy to meet all of you. Maybe just a brief introduction of myself. I am Wee Shann. I'm from Land Transport Authority. I look after technology, but I also look after training, industry development, and happy to be with you. For the last more than 10 years now, I'm in the transport domain. And I look at the maritime side of the house first, at the ministry, cutting across the different modes. And now I'm with land transport. So I was asked to share a little bit on smart transportation. I will focus on the sustainability part of it. And feel free to drop me the questions. I don't intend to keep on rambling and talking for the whole 1 hour. I suggest that I break up my sharing into 2 or 3, depending, and we can see whether there are questions along the way. Happy to address them either in my subsequent presentation or just directly answer them first. So don't need to hold back your questions. Do keep them coming right from the start, right? I also like to thank NTU for the invite for Land Transport Authority to share some of the other areas. So without further ado, I will move on to this presentation. Yeah, so maybe I use this. Okay, yeah. So I would like to first start with this slide because I feel that for land transport, actually it touches everyone and everything. You look at this slide have people who choose to walk, who choose to cycle, people take public transport to move around, people drive, people look at providing it. So from the moment you have to, move from one place to another, you engage land transport. And if you look at freight, the moving of goods, then again, we play an important role. And we are mindful that here, when we look at Singapore land transport, we are actually facilitating the Singapore's economy. We are facilitating people's social interactions, getting on to do what they're supposed to do. And that is a very empowering work for us, but we are also mindful of the impact that we are creating. And so, broadly with that, I want to share with you for the first part of it, what are some of our national challenges and set some context. So here you're seeing that land transport, how we play our role. On the left side, when you look at the column, we talk about the people that is working on land transport, the more than 100,000. The more than 100,000, we are just conservatively looking at the public transport workers and a little bit more. Our contributions to the Singapore GDP directly is not high. If you look at, for example, the manufacturing sectors, or even within our transport sectors, whether is it maritime or aviations, the direct contributions to GDP is actually much greater than ours. But we believe that underlying that, our indirect support is huge, as I said just now. If you look at the number of passenger trips daily, this is the figure pre-COVID. I want to share that with you because frankly, we don't know how we'll get out of COVID and whether we go back to the figures. But this is the figures that we are looking at. Every single day, we're looking at more than 3 million trips made in MRT, LRTs, about the same, slightly a bit more for buses. And for P2P, we are talking about the the taxis and the ride hailing, Grab, Gojeks, and all those all together, about 750,000 passenger trips daily. For COVID, the impact has been a bit uneven, but sometimes it can be as impactful as more than half is reduced. But now we are generally seeing about 70% of the pre-COVID volume. But still a big volume when we talk about passenger trips daily. And road network, frankly, is constrained by our land. We kept our vehicle populations, as I'm quite sure all of you already know. So with that, we roll out master plan. This is not the first master plan. We have rolled out quite a number of master plan, but Land Transport Master Plan 2040 is the latest. And in there, we focus on 3 key thrusts. The first thrust on 20-minute town, 45-minute cities. Really, before we roll out this master plan, we conducted an extensive public consultation, our most extensive one as compared to other master plan. Of course, we don't ask them what do you want, because if you ask them what do you want, we have a super long list, and obviously resource is finite. We won't be able to address everybody. But what we go about asking them is, if we present 2 different scenarios, and quite often it involves certain trade-off, then what would you choose? And they value convenience, they value certain time that we can kind of be assured before we reach our destination. And of course, they look at diversity, safety, and so on. And that's how we come up with master plan. And for the 20-minute town and 45-minute cities, what we realize is people would like to have seamless travel, but also with a certain idea of what kind of time budget do they need to allocate. Increasingly, they do occupy their time while traveling in many other activities. I think many of those, when you look at public transport users, they like to watch videos, they like to look at their digital news and so on the way as well. Transport for all is very important because for land transport, we are catering to everybody. And so we have to be mindful. There are certain stakeholders where they require a little bit more facilitation. And we put it there to highlight that that will be our focus coming forward in the next 20 years. It doesn't mean that we don't cater for it, but we want to make a deliberate effort. Transport for all can include things like barrier-free access to our transport nodes, how we look at, say, families with prams, we look at persons with disabilities, how we could cater to those maybe with medical needs, and still be able to take public transport, because that is a basic denominator, and we want to provide at least good, convenient modes for people to travel around. And if we are not able to do so, actually, they are quite associated, these amenities, sometimes can be social, these incentives that other sectors will have to contend with. So we are quite mindful of that. The third thrust is also increasingly become important. We want to make sure that as we go about providing good land transport options, we want to make sure that undergirding this, of course, it must be safe. We want to encourage people to take a healthy kind of mode of travel. If they can walk, they can cycle, we always want to encourage that. But we also then, of late, note that the environment sustainability is an important piece of work. So this is a land transport master plan for you. A very quick overview. If you are interested, just Google it. There's a whole full report there for your perusal. And keeping in mind, this is our goal. We set 2040 sufficiently long enough, 2 decades for us to work on things. And hopefully, some transformation can take place along the way. This is to remind us we want to create a car like Singapore, not because we do not love cars, but because the national constraints compel us to do so. I'll talk about it a bit later. And so we also want to remind us in this statement that it has to be a most resource efficient manner. Resource in many ways, land, budget, and manpower even. So with that, we want to be mindful. We still must provide a good, convenient way for people to walk, cycle, ride public transport, or move from one point to another. And not just people, but also goods. These are our national constraints. I think you have gone through many years of education. A lot of it you are very familiar. But it's important to always remind us of this because when we plan, when we execute, the constraints are the ones that push us to have certain behavior, to have certain kind of principles. I start from bottom right, limited land. Obviously, this is something we are always very mindful. Land transport infrastructure, we take up about 12% of land compared to housing, 14%. You know, we cannot carry on doing it. We have large depots, large car parks. If you add those in, the percentage is even higher. So it's obviously one area we cannot just keep growing and growing. Manpower, we have difficulty getting support on that, especially when we talk about drivers, bus captain, truck drivers. We have difficulties getting them. The locals are they have good range of options, and so for some of the driving vocations, we do not have a choice. We have to look overseas for the foreign talents to come in and support us in driving our buses, trucks, and so on and so forth. Changing travel demand is one. Well, just look at COVID, people working from home, the different peak we have to observe very carefully. In the past, there is a high morning peak, a slightly lower evening peak, but an obvious kind of peakish travel. As a result, congestion, as a result, people's movement is lengthened, is delayed. But we have to be mindful. There's always changing travel pattern, maybe because of the different business model, but now also because of our pandemic, right? Growing and aging population, something that we are quite mindful of. And with that, when we talk about transport for all, we will get old one day. And with larger populations getting old, I think the number is something like 2030, we're looking at 1 million of the populations above 65 years old. And when we are older, we move slower, we need more support. How do we provide a land transport that cater for such needs? We want to be very mindful. So we list down what are the urban mobility challenges. And then when you look at some of the policies we roll out, some of the initiatives, hopefully it then gel why we do so. And well, with that as a broad frame, I will go into my first segment. Like I say, feel free to ask me questions related to my presentations or general questions. I'm happy to take them all. So I will start off with environment sustainability is an important piece of work for two reasons. First of all, we are unfortunately a fairly large emitter at the national emission level. We are number 3. We contribute quite a bit because of the sheer volume. As I said just now, if you look at the passenger trips daily, millions of trips made every day. COVID, even pre-COVID was, and so we do contribute quite a fair bit of CO2. We ask ourselves, how do we reduce as much as possible? I think we can play a big part in this, and we choose that the public transport, walking, cycling, and riding public transport obviously are the most efficient. And if you do need to make car trips, you do own a car, then we are appealing for this group to consider a cleaner energy alternative. Just to give some comparison so that you can know how the CO2 emission is like. Walking, cycling, of course, zero carbon emission, very good. If you look at conventional ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine vehicles as a base. If you take or own a fully electric vehicle, the carbon emission is half. There's zero tailpipe, but we use LNG to generate electricity. So if you look at the whole value chain, it's about half carbon emission. If you take train, it's about 15%, and bus is somewhere in between. So obviously, our choice in our mode of travel directly influence how we contribute to the CO2 emission. And hence, for land transport, we believe there is a big role that we can play here. And so with that as a context, this is what we are doing when we look at master planning. We want to see how we can put in good infrastructure so that we can encourage people to move around in a very environmentally friendly way. Even when we construct our land transport infrastructure, we want to bear this in mind. How we put in the chiller system, how we integrate this, and of course, platinum, green mark, and so on, are ways to encourage, and we are playing our part. So many of our land transport infrastructure, we already factor those in. Where possible, we put solar panel and so on. So these are areas we work on, and these are areas that I think moving forward for the next 10, 20 years and even more, it becomes more and more important. So these are just some facts that we put out there. And that is why when Singapore Green Plan was rolled out, transport is one major part of it. We couch it as a green commute. When you day-to-day travel, whatever ways, like I say, it is important. We look at vehicles. We are not saying no vehicles, but we say, hey, can we help to facilitate cleaner energy vehicles? I was about to say we are not biased, but actually we have put a bet on electrifications. When we do a technology scan, electrifications will probably come in first. What about fuel cell, hydrogen fuel cell, and all those? We are open, we are tracking the technology, but between readiness, I think the electrifications, the electric vehicles, they are more ready. Then if they are more ready and we want to support cleaner energy vehicles, what should we do? On the screen, you will see some of the ways that we are doing. Under green commute, the larger context, we are very mindful. We have to continue to build a good, resilient public transport system. We continue to expand our rail network, make sure that our rail network is resilient, is comprehensive, and so it is nearer to home. Obviously, not every home will be right next to the MRT station. And that's where the bus become a very important conduit to connect the first and last mile. But beyond that, if people are able to, they are comfortable and they want to cycle from point to point, we build in more cycling path. We accelerate the building of the more cycling path. Of course, then, balancing the two is important. And we typically look at peak period because that's where most of the trips happen. And that's where the congestions happen, right? So on the right side, the cleaner energy vehicle side, we can talk a little bit more on electric vehicles. Usually I get quite a lot of questions there, so I allocate more time for that. So cycling path, I think this is one that really through the last 2 years, because of COVID or not, we see a lot of people taking up cycling. Some are taking up cycling because of leisure, but there are also many who then use this as a mode of travel. And if we see an increasing number of people using this as a mode of travel, what can we do? If and where possible, we build cycling paths. Bear with us, it will take some time. We put down here more than 1,000 kilometers of cycling path by 2040, but we are trying to accelerate this. We are also looking at what we call a walk to ride coverage. So not only a full travel all done by cycling, whether you could cycle to your transport nodes, take MRT, and probably walk the last few miles, right, to your destination. That's one way. So a couple of combinations. We are hard at work looking at active mobility. And increasingly, we want to collect data. We want to use AI, maybe technology, to see how can we plan better? How can we share the information with the commuters, the cyclists, so that safety, travel planning, and various awareness, even weather maybe, could be very helpful informations when people decide whether on today or on the day they want to travel, what is the mode of travel. Public transport, we always believe that public transport is the most efficient way to move a large number of people from one place to another. And this continues to be true. In our planning, we believe this is a key way for us to help move large number of people around. One train load more than 1,000 people. One bus load more than 100 people. Definitely much more efficient when you move people from one place to another. So when you look at it as a passenger per kilometer, these are great ways to move people around. And we will continue to want to do more. We want to see how we can make sure the bus are very reliable. So it's not just about the frequency, it's also about calling the bus stop on time. You will appreciate that not all the time can we do that because traffic conditions is very dynamic. But can we use the information, the technology to help us achieve this better? But we also think that maybe by providing information, then the commuters will be able to adjust a bit more. Trains, I think, from one point to another, it has we have improved the reliability. We'll continue to work hard to maintain that. So it is not a case where once we reach a good reliability, things will just happen on its own. A lot of things and efforts have to be made to maintain that. We will continue to work that because we want to make public transport attractive. In fact, more attractive. We want to nudge more people to use public transport. And we want to make your travel seamless and convenient. So with that in mind, we will move on. Vehicles, like I say, cleaner energy vehicle is our preferred choice for vehicles. So we do put in some policies to nudge people along. 2025, no new diesel car registration. By 2030, we are looking at all new car registrations to be cleaner energy model that include hybrid, battery electric, and hydrogen fuel cells. But if other technology comes in, they are cleaner, we are happy to consider that. On our own, we LTA as part of the is the government custodian to own public buses. So when we buy, we're going to buy cleaner energy bus, and we have already started doing so. We bought a small number, 50 diesel hybrid, 60 electric buses. We bought a small number to find out how do we deploy them efficiently, work out the concept operations, so that our subsequent buy in our bus replacement, we are very confident what works, what do not. I'll just give you one example why we do so. Electric bus is not, it's not something uncommon, right? Some countries, China, Europe, they have been deploying electric buses. But when you come to Singapore, because of our weather, and we do like our air condition, so our air conditioning in buses actually drain the battery a lot more. So the range that the battery can provide, the same battery pack in Singapore as compared to other countries, is reduced. And so by running the 60 electric buses, putting them in different routes, feeder, trunk routes, and so on, we get very good input what cannot be done. How do we charge it over at night, interchange, quick charging, and so on and so forth, and space. You can imagine that kind of optimization that we need to do. So there's a digital part of it, but you also can imagine the engineering work that we need to do from civil work as we build up bus depot, how we provide them, to operations, how we overnight roll out, pack the full electric bus, who comes in first, who comes in later, and so on and so forth. So there are many exciting and important problem statements that we need to solve it before then we can confidently scale. So these are some of the work that has already been done and will continue to do it. Our sustainability effort, not just on vehicles that I say, pushing work cycle right, but we are also looking at operations. Currently, we have billions of dollars of construction work. In the construction work, the way we require our contractors or partners to work on as we build up the infrastructure also directly impact to a greener and sustainable operations. And this period is one where Land Transport Authority, we are working on many major construction undertaking. Not only are we looking at building 2 new lines, right, JRL and CRL, we are also looking at building depots to support that. We are also building North-South corridor, major road construction work. So you can imagine that there are lots of construction opportunities and exciting but difficult problem statements that we need to solve. We are looking at engineers to work on those problem statements. And we have both an experience pool, but also getting in new engineers to make sure that when we build with the future in mind. Most of our construction operations, you will only see the results 7-10 years later. And so in stages, you will see that coming and rolling out. If we do not bear in mind that in 7-10 years time, things will be very different, using the current planning norm, we're going to have a lot of problem, right? Because by the time we roll out, the technology may be outdated. So we are constantly mindful of that. This is our cleaner energy vision. I think this was articulated 2 to 3 years now. We are working hard at working towards it. 2040 is not very far away. If you look at it from a certificate of entitlement cycle, it's just 2 cycles, 10 years each. And depending on what is the ownership kind of behavior, one who buy the car will stick to the use of the car that they bought. And so for us to influence the car buyer and buy a cleaner energy vehicle, the time and the opportunity for us to do that is not that long. So 2040, 20 years from now to then means that we probably only have 2 or 3 opportunities per car ownership cycle for the one who wants to own the vehicles, whether commercial or the personal use. And this is what we are very mindful. But in order for people to consider cleaner energy vehicles, especially for the battery electric vehicles, charging becomes an important part. So we are also working on the enablers part. This is our EV journey, and this is what we are going to work on. But before I go further into the EV journey, I want to take a pause now, and I want to maybe just see whether there are questions for me. There are any comments that I can take along the way. Yeah. So maybe with that, I pass back to Lavin, and you can let me know. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Lam, for the first half of your sharing and sharing about more of LTA's sustainability efforts and more of the environmental benefits of public transportation. I have also like a personal question. This is part of, sorry, excuse me. So LTA is more of like a public government agency, and they have continued to take the lead when it comes to driving sustainability and transportation among like other initiatives. But I was wondering, what are some ways the private sector could perhaps step up and also take the lead?
Well, thank you very much. I think the private sector role here is key. I look after industry development as well. And land transport is one of the 23 sectors where we have a industry transformation map. When we work out our industry transformation map, we decided that we are not going to do it alone. We have many different sessions with the private companies, with fellow government agencies, with Institute of Higher Learnings, with unions, and so on and so forth. And we asked them, how can we collectively work together? If you just look at the land transport master plan piece of work, the key stakeholders, obviously, beside LTA, also include, for example, public transport operators. We have 2 rail public transport operators, 4 bus transport operators. But then if you look at further, the what we call OEM, right? The OEM are the original equipment manufacturers, right? They provide the systems for our rail. They provide our buses and the bus systems, and they play a key role as well. And we want them to do more locally so that the turnaround is good. But also we believe that as we expand our land transport and in this journey, there's a lot of scope for them to do good work and export some of those innovations to the regional or international areas. So that is one. If you look at electric vehicles, since I'm landed on this slide, right? The private sector play an important role because we as in the government is unlikely to be the one directly providing the charging service. Then you form the retail level where we want good EV charging operators to provide good service, convenient service to our people, because if they do not do so, charging become a problem, and nobody will want to go for cleaner energy vehicles. They rather keep their diesel vehicles, their petrol vehicles, because they are very used to the way it is today. I just want to give you a few examples here and there, but broadly, the private sector play a very important role in providing a good service to our people. We try to do the master planning work. We probably help to provide some general directions and the leadership so that they know if we are clear in our directions, they can then, through their different networks, provide very good business model and products. And this is what we are doing. And on the environment front, this is what we are doing through Green Plan. This is what we are doing through very clear visions that by 2040, our aim is to phase out ICE vehicles. Then private sector, how will you respond? We want to be very clear that environment sustainability is important. And so when you bid for our construction work, can you share with us how you can also come along us to work through and provide a greener land transport? So this direction setting is an important part, but then the private sector come in to do a lot of good work. Yeah, so I hope I use some examples to answer how private sector can play a very key role. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Lam. Earlier, you also mentioned about the boom of cycling and how it's taken Singapore by storm in a way. So we have a question about cycling, and a member of the audience would like to know, will more cycling routes be built to ensure safe cycling in particular and also encourage and promote active mobility?
The answer is yes. I think I mentioned about building more cycling path and accelerating the building effect. So we have a network, you have your park connectors, you have some cycling path. Obviously, it is not quite sufficient yet. And so we want to make sure that within the town and the inter-town, there are good linkage where we are not able to do that kind of cycling path connections. Obviously, we also want to work on education where cyclists and vehicle road users can co-share the road space. Likewise, pedestrians and cyclists can also co-share some of the shared path. So that part of it is equally important because, like I say right in the beginning, one of the constraints that we can't wish away is land. And taking up precious land means that something have to go. Would it be the greenery that we have enjoyed and really like? Would that be the road space? Would that be space for our building? So these are hard decisions we are trying to make. And that's why one of the part that I think will still be very, very relevant is about graciousness, how we share and coexist. right? To segregate 100% and say that this is for the cyclists, this is for the pedestrian, this is for the vehicle users, going to be very, very difficult from a planning standpoint. But the short answer to the question is yes, we are building more. And we try our best to accelerate that, in fact.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Lam. Also earlier in your speech, you also mentioned that you're looking for, or LT is also looking out for new engineers to build the future in mind. So bringing that back to more of your experience in studying engineering in university, could you share what are some of the skills that you carried forth and still use today in creating a future of transportation in Singapore?
Well, thank you. Maybe just now I didn't quite say I studied EEE, Electrical and Electronic Engineering. I went on to do masters and major in telecommunications. But for myself, I didn't straight away jump into engineering projects and all. It was quite a long route in which I did various different things before I then come back, reassociate myself with engineering work. And now there are quite a number of technology projects. So for me, I have to do a fair bit of revision, right? Trying to get back all those that I've learned. But one thing good is that engineering discipline allow me to understand how to look at things at a system level, how to make trade-off, how when we have certain policies, it is, even if we grow the pie, it is also about making database kind of decisions. So those are very good foundations and attributes that allow me to contribute and value add in my job. For the engineers out there, if you look at land transport, actually the scope is very wide. If you are very keen to work on civil works for the next 10, 20 years, the major projects, and the major projects, as I said, are still ongoing and it won't end anytime soon. North-South corridor, we're just starting to build the a long expressway connecting north to south. And when we build it is not just about civil engineering at play. It is about what we call placemaking. We now want to build an expressway that together with the local community, make the place even better, allow people to connect even better. So it is not just a road that we are building. It is also about how that road facilitate even better life. And that is very exciting, right? And so as an engineer, you are deploying your engineering skills, but you are also going to tap on other attributes that you probably have to discover. Like how do you engage the local community and sometimes have to factor in some of their demands or requests so that the engineering create a good outcome that people like. If you are looking at the digital space, a very crowded space today, but also growing, right? Digitalizations support a lot of our e-services. So even though COVID strike, most of our contact centers, we have to downsize or even close at times, we continue to provide essential service through digital means. It is going to continue. And land transport is one area where we collect a lot of data. We want to make full use of the data to return back a better system to our people. And like I say, it means everyone, right? Industry, daily life, man on the street, people like you and I. So how to make use of the data? How do we don't abuse the data and so have that cyber security, protect the data is very important. How do we facilitate the use of the data so that just now you mentioned about private sector participation? A good way is to provide the data out there. And I want to give you one example. We have a system that collects bus arrival. So we put a note in every of our public bus. We now know exactly where they are, what time they're calling every bus stop. We didn't keep it to ourselves. We provide free of charge. We provide the information through our data mall. And so the bus arrival timing is now being used in many of the apps that I believe the crowd here may be using. Then one question we always get is, how come different app provide different bus arrival for the same bus service? The reason is because they use our base data, they overlay the algorithm, and then we will, they provide different insights using same raw data, for example. So again, that kind is, I feel, a very exciting work that we can do together. Why? Because land transport collects so much data, we can then plow back and provide even better journey planning, even better seamless travel. So engineering work, be it you're architect, we design some of the stations ourselves in-house. We design it, but because there are so many, we outsource many. We look at engineering, we look at this. We also look at technology work. Next gen ERP, I know many people have many comments on the clunky processing unit and all those. We invite you to come and see how we can do it better. But there are also AI, GIS, and all those where if I rattle on, there are so many different areas that we can work together, right? So I'll stop here to say that because of our wide scope, Land Transport Authority, I think we are the biggest step board right now. And so we are able to cater to different engineering work. And out of the 7,000 staff strength, I believe we have about 3,000 engineers in our midst. A big pool where you can learn from peers, a group projects that you can do, but come because you want to make a difference. Come because you want to deploy your engineering skill set. We are, unlike the private sectors, we probably want to have a fair remunerations, but not over the sky type. So, well, this is my personal take on that questions. What kind of opportunity an engineer would have in land transport, and particularly in LTA. Maybe I can take one more questions before I move on. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, there's this question because earlier you mentioned about some of the major projects that LTA is currently taking, like the construction of a new motorway, as well as digitalization efforts. But what are some plans or current works in progress by LTA that you are personally most excited for in the future?
Okay. Personally, I'm involved in a few. I look after what we call futures or future mobility work. So naturally, one thing of autonomous vehicles, I've been on it for the last 8 years or so. When I was in the ministry, I charted out the master plan. And that's one of the reasons why I joined Land Transport Authority. Because after charting out the master plan, I want to execute it myself. So that is one of my baby. The electric vehicle is another. So my KPI is get the charging point up and well, encourage people to take on a cleaner energy. That's another. I'm overseeing the next generation ERP system. And I am also basically overseeing all the technology integration work in LTA. And I don't do specific construction work. I help my colleagues to look at the overall, whether these are digitalizations and all those. So in my remit, I look at technology, I look at cybersecurity and IT and all. A pretty broad scope. Obviously, I have many teams and colleagues working on the verticals. Yeah. So I'm happy to talk about the specific projects that I'm on if there are specific questions later on.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Lam. I believe you can continue on with the second part of your sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Back
so,
to
well,
you.
thanks for the questions. Like I say, I'll continue to want to invite you to share your thoughts and questions. And I'll move on. So this is the EV journey that I've mapped out. We have mapped out what are some of the past projects that we have done. Personally, I'm involved in this Blue Edging, the EV car sharing program. I joined LTA in 2017. That is also when we officially launched the implementation of the EV car sharing program. I think you'll commonly see as a Blue Edge, you see the small car and all. So for the last few years, it gives us excellent opportunity to understand how do we deploy charging points. But for that program, we are also trialing the A to B kind of car sharing. I'm happy to see that network grow. I'm happy to see that our car sharing has taken a good spin, and compared to other cities, we are doing fairly well. So we continue to want to work on that. But for specifically on the electric vehicle journey, now is to scale it up at the national level. So we set up a national EV center. I help to oversee this, but we have a head national EV center who runs everything, right? Everything as in not just providing the enablers like chargers, looking at policies, looking at standards, but also looking at industry development, including manpower development. We believe that the overall kind of curation is needed to push this national agenda. So this is not just a LTA land transport work. We work very closely with many of our agencies, EMA on grid integration, HDB because they own most of the HDB car parks, URAJTC because they are also car park owners, but we also work with economic agencies like EDB, ESG, even A-Star, because there are a lot of opportunity from the industry side of the house. So we decided that having a national center look at all aspects, we will be able to tackle the issues in a more wholesome way. And the latest is we are also the center of excellence at the whole of government level. And so this piece of work is something that is growing. We have been hard at work for the last 1-2 years, but I think for the next 5-10 years, we have the work cut out for us. And it is also going to be very fulfilling if we manage to get our KPI up, because that's where we see the charges enabling people to switch. That's we see directly contributing to the environment sustainability piece. At this point, I want to say that for the sustainability focus area, the two key ways to really change and fulfill our part is number one, nudging people to use a more efficient way. Walk, cycle, ride public transport, or even your P2P. More efficient way to move people around, we are not changing that, and that is still very green, right? The second is for vehicles, electrify them, right? So that will to collectively help to reduce the carbon footprint from land transport side of the house. So looking forward, this is what we're going to do. Government fleet, we will certainly lead. We have good control over that. We will roll out a roadmap and we will execute that over the next few years. We have already rolled out incentive so that currently the electric vehicle price is still much higher than the internal combustion engine vehicles price. So by rolling out incentives, it will lower down. And we do this because many global reports have also reported that the battery, which is the most expensive part of electric vehicle, the price has been going down. And as more and more countries are taking up electrification as a main mode to provide a greener land transport, you'll see the car battery price continue to slide down. And at some point, they will reach what we call parity with ICE vehicles. And that is not quite there yet. So this incentive is to bridge a gap for a start. We hope that with this, people don't need to wait another 3-4 years for things to happen. People can consider electric vehicles even now, right? So this is where we are. Infrastructure, we have already publicly committed that we will roll out 60,000 charging points by 2030. 40,000 in public car park, slow chargers, most of them. 20,000 in private premises. It can be your shopping malls, your workplaces, and so on. And we see a lot. We see a lot of different stakeholders responding to it on their own already. We are optimistic that the momentum will just carry on. But like I say, we have the work cut out for us because it is not just as simple as putting the charging point. And if it is, we can do it overnight. But the linking to the grid means that our switch room and our substations must be sized properly. You can imagine that when we first roll out our town many, many years ago, decades ago, we never expect that electricity is so much needed, right? So when for the old towns, you look at it, most of the switch room is sized in a very small way. Why? Because in the past, the car park is surface car park. And then after that, become multi-story car park. Then we introduce lift, and now and lightings, of course. And now the electric vehicle charging points will require a lot more electrical load, a lot more than what the lighting and the lift require. That will mean that we have to upgrade. It will be a very costly upgrade if we put in fast charger. And that's why most of it will be slow charger. That means people will charge overnight and so on and so forth. So that overall work require very detailed planning, go down to the ground because different locations actually require different and quite a fair bit of engineering work is required. Then we are talking about introducing switchgear, transformer in the switch room in the substations, and no, so there are some civil work, but there are quite a lot of electrical work to make this charging point happen. And I say this a little bit more because NTU students, we go a bit deeper. I want to help you appreciate that it is not just as simple as drawing the electricity through a cable and there we have it charging point, right? For those, maybe you read business and you are keen to look at the business model, we have to make the business model work. And that means what is the charges, the money that the charging operators will charge. Then what kind of charges do they need to provide or give to the owners? What kind of business model? Because this is a new area, the business model, the market structure is an important piece, and we are working on this. So for the next few years, you'll see the market structure evolving, and the market structure will directly influence what kind of charges an electric vehicle owner will have to bear. And that would then leads to EV adoption. So we have a stake in it. We want to shape the market structure, but there are certain parts that the private sectors will then play. Moving along, this was announced early this year by Min Ong, our then Minister for Transport. We talk about getting the EV towns ready, and why we are not looking at the whole of Singapore, but EV town is precisely because of what I said just now. Some towns are more ready, some towns are less ready. But eventually, you'll see the whole Singapore being provisioned. And you are working on accelerating even that piece of work. So stay tuned. There will be more news coming early next year. But suffice to say, we know that if we don't have a charger that is nearby, the car owner will always see it as it's going to be inconvenient for me. So even if you have your 8 towns that is ready, if I stay out of that 8 towns, I'll probably not going to switch until I see a charger near me. So we are cognizant of this. We are working on how to provide that. I maybe look to Levin. Do you want me to stop or should I press on? This is my last part of the presentation. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see. Yes. Yeah, there are a few
Maybe
questions.
press on. Okay, you have a question. Maybe I'll take one question, then I'll press on to the last part. Then we have a Q&A, right?
Okay, sure.
I'm mindful of time, so I will make sure I'll keep to 11 o'clock.
Okay, sure. Perfect. So I think bicycles are quite a hot topic today for our audience members. So this person would like to know why are manual bicycles being encouraged but not electric personal mobility devices, especially considering the government's slash LTA's efforts in encouraging electric modes of transportation?
Well, thanks for the question. I can say that for most of in fact, everything that we do, we are mindful of the broader context. That, as I said, land transport impacts everybody. We are never going to compromise safety. So why manual bicycle. By the way, there are power assisted bicycles also, lah, right? But I take it that the question lump these together as one. And then why are we so hard on personal mobility devices so much as to ban them, right? On shared path. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for us because at one stage, there were big numbers of personal mobility devices and safety was compromised. And because safety was compromised, that hard stand was taken. But if you look at the sequence of events, it is not lack of trying. Land Transport Authority have worked on many different pieces to see how we can get it to work. But unfortunately, things didn't pan out. We are one key stakeholder, but we are not the only stakeholders that can swing everything. So what happened was that the large number of personal mobility devices, the use of it on a shared basis, impact overall users. You see nasty incidents happening, resulting in serious injury, some even fatality, because the speed differential is too great on the shared path, right? So people who use it didn't use it responsibly. And when a large number of people use it responsibly, a substantial number of people use it irresponsibly, you endanger the overall ecosystem. We try to put in place standards, we try to put in place regulations, we enforce aggressively. Unfortunately, incidents continue to happen. Serious injury, fatalities continue to happen. And that's not acceptable. We do not want our shared path to have a safety concern. Number one. Number two, charging. Unfortunately, the personal mobility devices has become a commodity that people can readily buy online, from point of sales, from the shops, and there are a wide range of model. Some are more better redesigned, better built. Some are not so. And because of so many, and we even go to the extent of import control, by the way. And because of this wide range, people charge at home. Unfortunately, there were again many nasty incidents that resulted in not just fire within a controlled area, but fire that impact others, their neighbors and all those. Again, if you look at our social context, where we have many public housing, right? HDB blocks all around. And so the charging of PMD by an irresponsible user doesn't just impact that individual. It now impacts the neighbors. And so, unfortunately, after so many tries, we have no choice but to say, we call time, let's forbid the use of PMD on shared path. So we're trying to balance it all the time. Where possible, we want to facilitate. In fact, at one stage, we will even, trying to see how we could facilitate the use of it. But unfortunately, the exponential growth have just make it difficult for us to carry on. Maybe on hindsight, if we have slowed down, things would have been different. But like I say, it is the context is not that easy to manage. And it's not just about Land Transport Authority coming in. And I hope I answered the questions. It is a tricky issue, but like I say in the beginning also, land transport is full of trade-off.
Yes, thank
Maybe
you,
I
Mr.
carry
Lam.
on.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes,
I carry
absolutely.
on, and I'm happy to take the rest of the questions at the end. I'm just going to take maybe the next 10, at most 15 minutes to finish up this deck. Future mobility, I think just now there were questions on what do I do personally. Overseas projects like autonomous vehicles, very exciting, very interesting piece of work. Autonomous vehicles, not quite ready, but when it is ready, it will definitely address one, manpower issues. Second, maybe even safety. Because if programmed correctly, it do follow rules. And if you look at many of our road incidents, many of those are due to human. It could be human error. It could be the improper use, that means aggressive driving, breaking of rules and all those. But let's be very clear as well. System will also break down. We are very mindful the use of autonomous vehicles doesn't mean zero incident. No, there will be accidents, there will be incidents that happens, but would the use of autonomous vehicles, because it's programmed and so the rules are followed, leads to safer? Yet to validate, but the potential is there. Potential of tackling the local bus captain, the difficulty of attracting the local bus captain is certainly there. And as you see from COVID, examples like this, where somehow our bus captain pool is affected, service get degraded, leveraging on technology like autonomous vehicles to continue to maintain the service become very important. I just want to state that half of our bus captain are foreign workers. So we are able to calibrate as the technology is developed, right? So that is how we see it. So with that in mind, we embark on autonomous vehicles for quite a number of years now. We roll out individual trials. We get to know the technology quite well. We are now studying potential for pilot deployment. But we are not going to pursue technology just because it is exciting. We are going to use the technology only when it makes sense. First, safety. Second, from an economic standpoint, hopefully it's cheaper. And third, it have to make sense at the system level. So we won't pursue just because we want to be world first to roll out. No, that's not what we intend to be. So this is autonomous vehicles for you. This is what autonomous vehicles technology work. If you're interested, I think you can Google that. There's a lot of good videos, there are good write-ups on that. But essentially, putting sensors on the vehicles, they help to sense the obstacles, and to do path planning. Then it directly pipe into the vehicle controls to act, to control the movement, moving forward, turn left, turn right, so on and so forth. These are some of the potential AV applications, not just on the roads. We are also increasingly see many autonomous vehicles. We still call them autonomous vehicles, but they are likely to be delivery robots on path and moving the last mile goods delivery. With that, we map out our roadmap. You see that there's no time frame to it because we are not in a rush. If the technology is ready, we will deploy them. If it makes sense, we will scale them. If not, we will stop short, wait for the technology to mature before we scale, right? So that's what I already said. So broadly, that is it. If you look at the left column, there are deployments for fixed and scheduled routes, especially during peak hours, no need to call. We will just dispatch autonomous vehicles, call bus stop to bus stop. But with autonomous vehicles, with fleet management system, we can do mobility on demand. For non-people mover, whether is it freight, utility vehicles, imagine the slow road sweepers and so on. If we could robotize it, we could effectively move it to wee hours in the morning, thereby indirectly increasing the road capacity without building extra road. So we are excited because autonomous vehicles offer us various ways to push and maximize our resources. And we don't have a preference which one to go first, which one to go second. We are trialing them all together. Where they are ready, we will scale. Where they are not ready, doesn't make sense to do so, we will wait for a while. But we also then mindful, the last part, the enablers, is that actually one part that is very important is public acceptability. So if we rolled out autonomous vehicles as public transport, our people wouldn't dare to use it, do not want to use it for one reason or another, it ain't going to work as like many other technology. So we are mindful, we need to develop this and also get public acceptance. If there isn't any, it's going to be very difficult. With that, I move on to other. I just very quickly run, just to complete the full picture. We also do a lot of digitalizations on the rail part of it. How we could then deploy, not just for the running of it, but also for the operations and maintenance, right? Simply using drones to do inspection, help our current manual inspection, right? So some of the inspection is very, very manual today. So we want to see whether through digitalization, we can replace them, increase productivity, and also then have faster turnaround. Smarter bus system, I talked about the bus arrival, so I'm not going to belabor the point here. Travel data, how we can share this with the industry, how we can use this for planning, modeling. There are also micro modeling, macro modeling, the visualizations, analytics. So we have a small pool of data scientists in LTA, but we believe that we want to level up, especially our engineering pool, so that they have basic understanding on digital, the data usage. So we have digital literacies for almost everybody, but we also have people equipped with tools, also skill set to be able to play with the data more. In fact, if you join or come and visit LTA next year, we're going to have a data lab where we encourage our staff or maybe our collaborators, play with them. We will provide the tools, we will provide the data, but bring along your problem statements, tinker it on your own, because this kind of what we call citizens developer is just as important. You know the operations better, the design that you have will most likely answer what you need. But if you need tools, you need expertise, we can support that. Open data sharing, something we believe we are not going to do it just by ourselves. We want to invite the stakeholders to come in and do it together with us. Next gen ERP system, not just a demand management tool or the congestion management tool, but with the data it collects, it is able to then tell us what kind of traffic management we need to take, plow back to the motorists. Hopefully you get the information much earlier, you can make decisions better. More importantly, we can also use those informations, give priority to those vehicle types that need priority. For example, emergency vehicles, for example, our public buses. Improving accessibility, how we could facilitate the transport for all, catering to the different groups, provide information to our user, assistive technology, like I say, persons with disability, their reliance on app is quite high, but with good app, we are able to also facilitate their movement. I come to the end of my presentation. I just have 2 more slides. This is a slide where typically we show, well, the blurb there talk about autonomous vehicles, but broadly you see there, it is a mixed development. On your right, you see housing estates. On your left, you see light industry. It's a town center, obviously, where if on the surface level, we can give back the land where there's a lot of greenery and all those, but underground, there are key transport nodes, different modes to bring you to intra and inter-town places. What would that be like? This is an artist illustration on how things can pan out. At night, activities can carry on because of robotizations, then how would that be like? And with that, I end my presentation. Happy to take questions from there. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Lam. Yes, there are a lot of questions that kept flowing in as you were speaking. So perhaps we can start off with this question more about the ways we can create a more circular sort of economy for e-waste. So I'll read out the question first. So yeah, one of the ways to reduce Singapore's emission levels are by phasing out old vehicles with inefficient engines, and the COE cycle enables this. So what about encouraging more sustainable technologies for private vehicles that can be used longer with less waste? So especially for like electric vehicles, when batteries are often disposed of in third world countries, are there any frameworks or existing or in the works that we could reuse parts of other cars to create more of a circular usage?
Thank you. I don't know how many questions you have, may I suggest that you maybe you can read out one or two or three related questions, we cluster them, and happy to address them. Then we move on to another cluster.
Yes,
Will that
absolutely.
work?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So is there any other questions related to saying the electric vehicles or sustainability to that extent?
More on electric vehicles. I think they're very popular today. So I'll just read out two more related to electric vehicles. So how's the government or LTA ensuring the safety of electric vehicles? For instance, will there be infrastructure put in place to counter the risk of electric vehicles? For instance, there was a Tesla that spontaneously caught on fire. And so will perhaps fire extinguishers be placed near charging facilities? And sort of what are some ways to counter the risk of electric vehicles? And just one more question, also related to EVs. How universal are electric vehicle chargers? For example, can one charger charge both Blue SG and Tesla? So yeah, those are some of the questions.
Well, thank you. And the questions are good questions. I can see that you are starting to think, if as an engineer, what will you do? What are some of the areas that you need to cater to? So I would say that safety is a very important topic, and especially just now I talked about personal mobility devices charging at home causing fire, right? Charging electric vehicle also have the same risk, right? So what are some of the ways that we ensure safety? We in fact have these standards, what we call technical reference 25, where it stipulate all the requirements, what to do, what kind of safety mechanism the charging points, charging system would need, and the installations, and finally maintenance. So you have broad standards. The international standards, we also have national standard, which is the TR25 that we already have. So for the last year, together with industry, Institute of Higher Learning and so on, we gather the experts, we have reviewed them. We are very close to rolling out the revised TR25. What have we done? We have expanded the scope. So the previous TR25 is very focused on cars. We have expanded the scope to include low power. Low power, that means like things like your e-motorcycle. High power include buses, pantograph charging. High power include your Tesla supercharger as an example, and many other superchargers, right? So high power. We have even looked at battery swapping. Right? Some of you who Google will can see Gogoro as a very classic examples lah, that on battery swapping. So by expanding the scope on the Tech Reference 25, we are indirectly stipulating the safety requirements. And we do this together with fellow government agencies experts, industry experts, so that at the national level, first, there are certainty. Private sectors who want to come in and deploy the chargers understand what is required. Second, we have a group of experts who regularly review and say, it continues to be safe if you charge this way. So very soon, in the next quarter, definitely, we will be sharing the upgraded or revised TR25. And that helps. That's number one. Number two, when we form National EV Center, we take on the regulatory function. Middle of this year, we put up a bill and it was properly discussed, and Parliament has passed the bill giving Land Transport Authority the regulatory powers to help regulate this sector. Next year, we're going to put up more bill to stipulate what are some of the control points to ensure that the ecosystem is a safe ecosystem. And that's important because after you have your standards, you do need a regulatory body to look at enforcing, to look at continual maintenance of safety standards so that things is rolled out in a safe way. We want to roll out things aggressively, but we also want to make sure that it is safe. One nasty incident will make the whole program, in jeopardy lah. So we are mindful of that. Now, I hope I answer one of the questions on safety. The charger already come with fair amount of standardization, and that is global standardization. So bear with me, I'm going a little bit detail. If you look at the connector plug, so if you walk past a charging point, right, and you look at the connector plug, think of it like 3-pin, 2-pin. Now year end, some of you may do BTL, go to other countries. What is one of the things that you often will remind yourself? Are you bringing a transformer, right? Why? Because even if they use the same voltage, sometimes the pin configuration will differ, correct? We use 3-pin here as a norm, but other countries may be 2-pin, others may be different kind of pattern. Same for charging point. There are a fair number of different connectors, but there are one or two that is fairly well used. So we have stipulated what we call Type 2 and CCS2 for a national charging standard. That means for all vehicles coming in, they have an outlet that can take Type 2 CCS2. So when we type approve a vehicle, before they can come into the Singapore market, we already know they can take in this connector. Then we say CHAdeMO, which is another fast charge kind of connector type configuration, is an optional. So what you see for public chargers, private chargers, they can deploy what they like. But for public chargers, they're using a pretty standard one. So within Singapore, it's standardized already. A natural question that people like to ask me is, what happens if I go to Malaysia, right? So sometimes the configurations is different, but I want to share that why LTA chose CCS and Type 2 and CCS2 as the national charging standard, because when we do a scan, this is the most prevalent, most frequently used. And so it is a very high chance that other countries are also using that. So there's one of the considerations for, I think, the last question. Now going back to the first questions, which is, what about circular economy, the batteries? Are we going to be just chuck it one side? And hence, here I am keep talking about environment sustainability, but actually it's not very environmentally friendly, right? So again, National EV Center, but also broader, the government, we are looking at that seriously. So NEA, they are the agency in charge, and they have, when they look at pollutions, disposal, and all those, and they have what we call extended producer responsibility policy. What it means in layman is, if I bring in the batteries, I'm in charge of disposing it responsibly. How they do it, whether they recycle the battery within Singapore, whether they export it but recycle the batteries thereafter, there are various options that they can consider, or they can put forth their proposal. So we are mindful that there is a good scope. In fact, within National EV Center, we have a small team, 2 persons, right? One secondee from A-Star, looking at what kind of research opportunity. The number of EV is small, and so the battery disposal and recycling is not huge, but we understand this could well be a good area Singapore embark on. And if we do it right, it may not even be just for Singapore. It may also help the regional battery disposal or recycling. And so I just want to say thanks for the questions. We are mindful of it. We are looking for people to come together to do it. And when I say people to come together to do it, we're looking at collaborators. We're looking at what are good ways to do it, because we don't want to recycle without knowing what kind of end users we are talking about, and hence what kind of cost structure we are talking about as well.
Thank you.
Well, may I suggest, would there be other areas? I'll try to answer some other questions related to other areas. I'm happy to come back if there are so many other EV questions.
Yes, absolutely. So there is a question more about IoT, Internet of Things, as well as smart sensors and connectivity projects. So It's more about how does or how will LTA and other involved stakeholders ensure the cybersecurity side of data and connectivity, especially when it comes to this whole new era of digitalization and Internet of Things.
Well, thanks for the question as well. This is one key area. We are working on it because traditionally, people talk about cybersecurity. When they talk about cybersecurity, they talk about IT system being protected. That means the likes of our desktops, our IT system, OA, and all those. But we are seeing that even the operation technologies or OT is also susceptible to cyber attacks. And that you can imagine that when we build operations technologies or the system to run our operations, at that time it is about controls, it's about actuations, it's about putting system to decide, and then you control actions and carry on, right? And not much is on how the data come in that may leads to a different actions and hence susceptible to cyber attack. Increasingly, you see quite a fair bit of it, and ransomware, malware being introduced. And so we are mindful that this is an area we need to tackle because land transport has so many OT. And the OT system require protection. As we put in protection, new form of attacks surface. So it's a constant calibrating, upgrading. It's never, there's no end to it, but we have to keep up. No different from patching work, upgrading work that you see in your laptop. So that is one area we know we have to do more, and we know we have to constantly be vigilant. They only need to be successful once, whereas we have to protect at all areas. So with that mindset, then it's not just about the technology. It is also about education. It is also about response. So what happens if we are breached? How do we quickly recover so that essential services continue to run and run safely? So I would say that this area, one is on the digitalization, how we exploit digitalizations with IoT and all those. But as we digitalize, say, rail system, we also need to protect them. As we protect them, we also need to be mindful that the operations, incident management have to be put in place, and hence the people part, the education of our own workers have to be put in place. So it's a whole range of actions that we need to work on, and it's a system approach that we are taking here.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Lam. So before we end, looking at the time, we have just, I think, one more minute. There's just a question more about your views. For example, if you could have any question answered about the future of transportation in Singapore, what question would you want to be answered?
Wow. I work on futures and the future mobility for some time now. I don't really think that there will be one particular question or answer that will cover everything. One is because land transport is just so wide, right? Majority of our time is spent talking about people mover. We haven't even quite talked about goods delivery and moving of goods. So I would say that if I have I would say have the crystal ball, but if there are insights that could be shared with us, then I say one area is always about people and people's need for movement. So quite often when I do sharing, I end off with a slide, but this round I didn't. And that is to share that land transport, you can see that there are many systems. And so naturally, there are many exciting engineering problems to be solved. But actually, it is not just about engineering work. it's also about the social part of it, right? Because ultimately it's about people, right? It's about how people move, how people choose to move, and how people would like to experience as they move along, right? That social part of it, the behavior part of it is just as important. And so it is a engineering specific problem, it's an optimization problem, it is a social problem. And when you put all this together, it's a very complex part of it. And if there is a crystal ball that provide insights, my take is the one that is more challenging is people's behavior and how people react to it. For example, COVID and post-COVID. Will people mostly work from home? Will people rather come and meet their colleagues and interact? What is the mix? What is the behavior? It's very difficult to tell. And if we don't plan it well, we may end up over-resourcing or under-resourcing, and catching up is always difficult in land transport, infra-heavy sector. And so it boils down to that unpredictable people behavior, I suppose. And when we put more and more people together as a group, then sometimes it becomes even more difficult. So I would say that part is the most challenging. Yeah. And also because we work so hard, it must be for outcome. And the outcome must be to help improve lives. Then for us to facilitate the movement of our own people.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So ultimately, that is what we are working for, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I feel like even though people are at the heart of transportation and everything in our society, they're also sort of the most difficult things in our society that we have to address and accommodate. So looking at the time, that is all the time we have for today's session. So on behalf of Techignite and NTU's College of Engineering, I would like to sincerely thank you, Mr. Lam, for your time and for your enriching sharing about the future of transportation in Singapore.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here and share some of my thoughts. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lam. So
thank you. See you.
See you, Mr. Lam. So to our audience, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that this event has ignited your interest on how the transportation infrastructure in Singapore will be changing around us in the future. So now that you have heard more about the future of smart and green transportation from LTA, I'm sure you're all buzzing to learn more about the other roles of engineering in Singapore and around the world. Well, it's perfect that our next Techignite speaker series will be all about the engineering behind one of Singapore's most iconic landmarks, the super trees of Gardens by the Bay. And we will be hearing from Expand Group of companies, the very engineers behind the project, and this will happen on the 5th of January in 2022. And swiftly after that, we have another exciting talk from SP Group to learn more about the engineering behind keeping the stunning Marina Bay area cool in hot and sunny Singapore. So that is something you can look forward to on the 7th of January as well. As our speaker will be giving you a deep dive into the world's largest district cooling network. Do check out NTU's Techignite website or follow our official Techignite Instagram to find out more about these fun and engaging activities organized just for you. So we hope to see you there.